All right, we are rolling now.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
Counting us
Come
down.
talk some business.
3,
Sweet,
2.
tasty business.
You're listening to Missing Out with Lex Michael and Tauri J. Let's start the show.
Hey guys, welcome back to Missing Out. I'm Tauri J.
I am Lex Michael.
And today we're joined by good friend of the show, Malik McCrea.
I feel like
yeah.
I gotta correct you there first. It's McCrea, but that's all
McCrea?
right. A
This
lot
is-
of people
it's
read
pretty
it how
much-
they see it. That's
At
okay.
this point, it's pretty much a running bit on the show that Tari's gonna maybe botch the
Get you there,
pronunciation
wrong.
of somebody's name the first time.
Yeah, I'm a monster.
It's all good. I'm real happy to be back, man. It's good to see everybody. How's everybody doing? What's been going on? I do feel like I'm a friend of the show. I feel like you're one of those, like, you know, like when you host Saturday Night Live for like 5 times and you get a jacket or something like that.
Yeah.
Am I gonna get a jacket or something soon?
You're the Tom Hanks of
I'm the
Missing
Tom
Out.
Hanks
Yeah.
of the show. That is high praise, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we'll give you like a sticker. We haven't necessarily started doing jackets yet, just because Lauren Michaels won't return our phone calls.
Oh damn, Lauren, you want me to call him?
I do. I would love that, just to get us that little bit more cred. You know.
See how the show goes.
Yeah.
It's good to see you guys, man. Happy New Year. I can
Likewise,
say
yeah.
that.
Happy New Year.
It's been a minute. I haven't seen you in.
You can say that all January.
I think it's fair. Yeah.
You can't say it in February.
Well, when is Chinese New Year?
Yeah, I think I want to say it's February or March.
Okay, so that extends that window a little bit. Where like I could say you could go into April, I think, and not be over egregious with your New Year's wishes, especially if you haven't seen the person.
Well, what I do is I do Happy New Year until February, and then I just be like, stay black.
Oh, word. You say black because that's February, right? You
that's
can say
yeah.
right, but you can only say that for like 28 days.
That's not true. I say it until the next New Year.
Yeah. So it's all year round.
Hell yeah.
Stay black until the
Right.
next. Got it.
Maybe like until Christmas, and then I'm like, Merry
Cool.
Christmas.
Cool.
But just that day, because then Kwanzaa starts.
Okay.
and
That's right. Stay black all year round.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Right, Lex?
I'm so for
Right,
it.
Lex?
I'm for
Right?
it. I love that.
Affirmation.
That's what I say when people wish me Merry Christmas. And they're like, okay, because they're white.
Right, of course. Lex only hangs out with white people during Christmas. He's like, I'm going to have a white Christmas every year. And we think that he means snow, but you know what he's talking
And
about.
I find myself in the room, sitting in a corner, reflecting on the horrible choices that I've made and how uncomfortable I am and how I've dug my grave and must now lie in it.
Yeah, but we pull you back by the end of the year, and then you're back to Happy New Year. This week,
What just happened?
we are talking about freelance culture and entrepreneurship. We're getting real deep into business talk, but we're starting with a little thing called the People's Collective.
Oh, man.
So this is our segment, The Pitch. Yeah.
These are pitch noises, I guess. We'll get a jingle or something.
Yeah. Do the pitch. Yeah, that's what it is.
And now you're going to drop that into every episode.
It's perfect. So Malik, can you pitch to us what is the People's Collective?
We're talking like elevator pitch. We standing in an elevator.
You're sitting in an
How much
elevator. You
time
got
we
11 seconds, baby.
You got
Oh, man.
11. We are super fucking important. We don't got time for this shit. You got
Okay,
till these doors slide open a couple floors up.
And here's the thing: it's an evolving definition, but essentially, the People's Collective is self-explanatory. It's a collection of people with like-minded energies and just that want to come together and do something creative.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a collection of just like you have musical artists in there, you have sound engineers, you have videographers. I myself am a director. We have video game developers. It's just a whole bunch of people that are coming together with the same ideas, trying to get something off the ground from the muscle of themselves. You know what I mean? And like it sounds super cliche and it sounds super like, but it's the absolute truth, and it's one of the strongest things I've been a part of for a long time. You know what I mean? So the People's Collective is just, it's exactly that. It's just like a collection of anyone that thinks the same way that you do. You know, they say that if you think about something, chances are another person's already had that idea. So it's about finding those people putting them together, and there's strength in numbers. So it's about finding those people and seeing, if you can turn those thoughts and those conversations into product.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? Something that changes the culture, something that shifts the zeitgeist. And it's the attempt of that. You know what I mean? It's just about, how long and how far can you take it with those people,
Yeah.
So
That's interesting. 'Cause like we all live in LA. We all work in LA, and you know how hard it can be to find like-minded people who can also take their creative passions and essentially make them into a business. Like, it's easy to have ideas, but executing them with people who complement one another is always very difficult.
Well, especially people who will keep their eye on the ball, because you also know how easily distracted folks in this town can be.
And I say this all the time. Like, this job that I do and the way I want to live my life would be so much better if I didn't have to do it with anybody. You know what I mean? Because it's just like a lot of this and a lot of stuff that we don't pay attention to is the gamble, the juggling of egos, and just the way the way people look at the world differently. Like, the three of us probably have very different ways of looking at the world. You know what I mean? And it's like we've managed to find kindred ways that come together in certain things that we do, which makes it easier for us to work together. But it's like there's just so much that's fundamentally different from one eyesight to the next. And it's just like you have to take that into account when you want to come together and do something huge. You know what I mean? Like, movies are big things, music videos, productions. These are huge things. These aren't things that you can just, fathom in your bedroom and then like come out and look at it on the TV. Like, you need to call somebody. You got to make some phone calls. You got to be let down. You have to, worry about your idea not sounding as hot to somebody, that the way you're thinking about it in your head. You ever have something like really hot in your head and you like tell it to someone and they just don't, you know what I mean? And it just kind of, so you got to work with all of that. And I feel like the People's Collective is first and foremost about building a cult of personality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, because once that's established, and once it's like you're going into a situation knowing that you're trying to leave, having made a memory, having made something with some cool people, then the work will get better and the stories will write themselves. And like, you know what I mean? I think that's how I like to look at it. And it's been working for me so far. So
nice. How did you get involved with them in the first place?
Well, so I got involved with the People's Collective officially. I've always kind of just been like a floating affiliate. People's Collective was something that was founded a couple of years ago by a really good friend of mine named Michael EQ Anderson. Everybody call him EQ. Don't say Michael. So he founded the imprint, the People's Collective, with a couple of musicians a few years ago, and it was like primarily a musical thing. EQ is from Philadelphia, and we met back in like 2010, back when I was working in Philly. I was in film school, and the thing to do in Philly is to get involved in the music scene and start hopping on people that need music videos. Like, if you want to start building your craft, like that was my way into authorship, because I was like very stubborn and I didn't really like digesting film theory and all of the shit that they were trying to like cram down our throats in film school. So I found my solace in going out with my camera. My uncle bought me a 7D, and I would take it out and I would just like go shoot people rapping, because everybody and their mom wants to rap in Philly. So it's like I got to shoot people like Drake when he first came to Philadelphia. I got to shoot Meek Mills back when he had cornrows and shit like that. So I was like slowly but surely getting into this music scene, and I was working very closely with an artist, and EQ was the sound engineer for that artist we were working with. And we kind of struck up a mutual kind of friendship through the artist we were working with. And then when I moved out to California, he told me, he was like, hey, EQ's out there too. So he got me in touch with him, and EQ was the first person I linked up with. I moved here in 2013, so it's going on like 5-6 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we linked up, and the nature of our relationship has always been like, we would link up, we would do shit for a good 2-3 months, and then we wouldn't see each other for like 6 months, and then life would change, and then like everybody would be in a different place when you got back together again. So fast forward to like around October of last year, I hadn't seen EQ for maybe like another like 6. It probably been like 6 or 8 weeks at that point, because he'd just gotten back closer to me, and so we'd been hanging out. But Lex and I worked at a production company called Super Deluxe that had been acquired by AT&T at the top of that year. And so there was all of this talk as to like what would happen to us and our little passion project over the year, and like whether or not we'd still be good. And there were so many different conversations about that. Like one conversation would tell you that we were good till 2020. One other conversation would tell you that, oh, we're good until the end of the year at least. You know what I mean? So October comes and the decision was made to dissolve the company. So like everybody, 54 some odd people all at once just got told that today was their last day of work.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, showed up to work that day. Everyone to a person showed up to work that day going like, yeah, hey, Friday.
It was,
you know what
Friday,
I mean? Like,
bro.
we'll be New Year's coming or whatever. Halloween's coming up.
Yeah,
and
bro,
like,
it's Halloween.
So we're doing like some specialty specific
Bro,
streams.
yeah,
and like,
man.
and we'll all be back on Monday because that's how jobs work.
Bro,
And
like,
then, yeah, like, everybody come downstairs.
they buttered us up with pizza and beer. Like, they were like, I fell for that shit hook, line, and sinker. You know what I mean? And I've since gone through the whole spectrum of emotions one can go through for that. But like, so what happened? A very interesting thing happened that day, though. So the first thing I did, you know, when you're like, it's like that scene where fucking, where Tom Hanks is like in shell shock coming up Normandy, coming off on the beach and Saving Private Ryan. Everything's just like, oh. So that's me when Wolfgang is like explaining, like, oh, I failed. I'm sorry. Like, he's just, you know what I mean? So the
heavy,
president
man.
is lamenting on just like how he tried, and like, and you're hearing it and you're like, damn, like, fuck. But it's all just like, just coming in bullet time, because you're just fucking, you're in shock. You're just like, yo, like, money, what's gonna happen with money and all this. You start just panicking because you're like, you realize that you've been doing that. I've been doing that for like 3 years. I had the most comfortable, best job for like 3 years. You get so comfortable, you get so lax, and there's no challenge. There's no, like, you know what I mean? I got to walk to work every day.
But like no challenge, not no challenge in like an unstimulating way. Like no challenge, like every day at that job was a kind of a fun day at that job.
A fun day. Like every job, it has its politics and stuff like that, but that paled in comparison to just the sheer level of like creative freedom that you had. So anyway, when the axe dropped that day, like halfway through the I'm sorry speech the president was giving us, I kind of left and I just went back upstairs. I went to the decompression room because I needed to decompress. And I called my mother and I told her what happened, because like she gets the front line, you know, news of all the, she's always outside looking in on the East Coast, so she gets the first, anything that happens of any kind of notoriety, she's the first to know. So I called her. And then I called EQ. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what made me call EQ, but he had been in work with us at Super Deluxe prior that week, because he was helping me work with one of the musical artists that I was doing some stuff with there. And so I called him and I was like, bro, like, that's it. Like, all the stuff that we worked on is not coming out. Like, the stuff that he came in and helped do, that stuff is a wrap. The show that we were preparing to do that day is a wrap. And I was just like, bro, I just hit him with some, like, I don't know what to do, man. I don't know what's going to happen. And he was like, well, I'm doing some event coverage tomorrow night for this Halloween party, and you should just bring your camera and come shoot that with me. And I was like, cool, man. And, you know, fast forward the next day, I'm at this Halloween party, and I got my camera in my hands and I'm shooting. It was basically like this big Halloween party that this one of these tastemakers was throwing, and they have like performances and stuff like that, and they wanted some videography for the event so that they can advertise for when they would do it the next time. And I'm sitting there and I was like, I haven't had my camera in my hands doing something independent of my job in like the 3 years that I've been working there, and it took me losing that job to get right back to it the very next day. And so the People's Collective was kind of born from that, and then like I was welcomed with open arms. EQ came into a nice amount of money earlier that year, and he just decided to invest it in himself. He bought a whole bunch of cameras, and that was that decision to do that was I feel like was the birth of the film side of People's Collective, because before then it was just, like I said, it was just EQ and a bunch of rappers. We got people in Toronto, we got people in Philly, and it was just EQ and a bunch of these dope artists, musical artists that he had these, kindred relationships with. And the birth of the whole film side was me coming from Super Deluxe with all the stuff that I was learning over there, and him investing in getting, we got a Sony A7 II, we got a bunch stabilizers, lights, we got a whole bunch of stuff, and that was the inception of the whole path that we're on now. You know what I'm saying? And and it's like now that looking back, that was what, in October. For the rest of that year, for the rest of 2018, it was just event coverage. It was thinking about how we can continue to brand the People's Collective. Mm-hmm. We came up with an idea for a mockumentary series about the People's Collective that, is rooted in all of the real stuff that we go through, trying to make this thing a thing, trying to get people to say the name and see what we're about. And so we go through a lot of shit and we meet a lot of crazy people. So the mockumentary essentially writes itself, and it just it has just snowballed into this brand new initiative I'm on in 2019, trying to still pursue the ultimate goal, which is to become an auteur and to be able to tell stories on the biggest scale possible, and then whatever scale I want to from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, the People's Collective has quickly become the vessel that's fast tracking me to that lifestyle, man. And it's I would have it no other way. You know what I mean? Because the 3 months that we've done work after in October, if I can apply that same level of synergy to these 12 months that we got right now, mm-hmm. It's who knows where that'll take us. You know what I'm saying? So it's that's why I'm here today talking about it. That's why we have our own podcast that we'll get into later. But you know what I'm saying? That's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was going to ask, is you mentioned you guys do event coverage.
Yeah.
And I had noticed that you guys also do review stuff.
Absolutely.
So I know that you guys are still kind of defining mm-hmm. the direction, and I know that you want more story oriented things. Do you feel like you guys will have essentially separate categories of content that you're going to be creating, mm-hmm. or is it more that you're going to utilize the stuff that you have to do whatever it is that any individual creative wants to do, and try to have it be more of a broad definition of content? As long as you're creating content, it's not necessarily you're creating just stories, or you're creating just non-scripted content.
I mean, I think EQ's vision is to cover as much of the board as possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think, and it's just we want to envelop pop culture. We want to envelop the concept of cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that can be so many things. I want to be the kind of person, I want to be the kind of creator that earns the trust of the viewer because of my ability, not because of what they think I can do. You know what I mean? And it's and the only way that I know to do that is to just keep trying different things. You know what I mean? So it's I think it's good that I want you to be able to Google the People's Collective and see and learn about us from the show that we're doing, and look at our movie reviews and see how, you know what I mean, and then listen to our podcast. And then I want you to be able to, come to us for an idea that you have that you want to get developed, or if you need a sketch shot, or you know what I mean, if you want somebody to bounce some ideas off with, any kind of consulting. I want you guys to be able to do that. I want people to be able to do that. But I want to first and foremost make sure that we're emphasizing the imprint that is the People's Collective, and that's the umbrella that kind of drapes over everything. You know what I mean? But I want you to be able to look at a Drake video one day and see that it was shot by the People's Collective.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's wherever we could get in and put our fingerprint on something, mm-hmm. I think that's the goal. Yeah. And I'm only one person, by the way. So it's I can't really speak for the entirety, but I feel the parts that I'm involved in and the parts that I bring to the table, those are definitely where the initiatives lie.
Yeah, and like conventional wisdom tells us that the more irons you have on the fire at any given time, the greater chance that one of them will potentially lead to some kind of success.
Exactly.
And then because you've got a whole bunch of like-minded people who are doing a whole bunch of different things, the success in one area can kind of hopefully trickle over to the other areas, and then suddenly people do know that brand.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is one of the tenets of a successful business, especially like a small business is the ability to pivot when you are essentially heading down a path. Because one thing that, and I feel like this is a really good opportunity to kind of get into the grander landscape of like kind of how the employment and work environment is now, and that like a lot of companies that had started, essentially they come and go because they have define themselves as one specific thing, and then the industry moves on, and if you only do one thing, then essentially when you're not relevant anymore, you die.
Exactly.
And so like, yeah, the ability to be a flexible company and not only create content, but also be able to consult and also be able to provide services allows you to have all of these multifaceted aspects to your company, which means that if there is no longer a requirement for people to do one thing, you can also lean into something else.
Exactly. I mean, like the whole part of the whole reason why my staying power was the way that it was at Super Deluxe was because you have to be willing to put a different hat on at any moment's notice. And Lex can attest to that. Like, he's been talent and crew several times, you know what I mean? Sometimes both, you know what I mean?
So it's one day I'm helping, like I'm assisting camera or I'm moving lights around, and the next day I'm in a golden bathtub eating shrimp
and getting a fan base and people falling in love with Shrimp Daddy and like all of that stuff, man. And it's just like, but another thing that I did learn at Super Deluxe that like I'm sure a lot of people are starting to feel, and which is kind of where I feel like the conversation is going anyway. It's like I was still working for somebody. I still had a boss, and that still was I don't know. Everybody is different, but I'm the kind of person where that was like bothersome. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Having to like answer to someone and having to constantly like fight for your ideas and stuff like that, which is like how it's supposed to be in the real world. But I just feel like entrepreneurs have a better approach to that because it's literally like we have the right to refuse to like work for anybody.
Right.
You know
And when you're an employee and you have a boss, not only do you have somebody that you have to answer to, but there is also somebody who's in a position to tell you, oh, you can't come work anymore.
Right. So that changes everything about how you defend yourself and how you defend your ideas. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff is like, that shit breeds anxiety, man. Like for the, you know what I mean? Like I said, everybody's different. But for me, I kept getting into a lot of these spells where I'm like, man, like, why can't they just let me do me? You know what I mean? And it's like, at the end of the day, I understand that the reason why they can't let me do me is because it's not fucking about me. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it's like you gotta kind of find the middle ground between those ideals. And like the conclusion that I came to was that like I'm somebody like that I gotta be my own boss, man. You know what I'm saying? Like I gotta be, and I would much rather be in a situation where like I'm collaborating with a peer instead of working for a superior.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
And like, I feel like I think that's where we're going. I think that's where we're going in the country. I think that's where we're going with the growing mentality of this generation. It's like,
yeah. And especially as everything becomes more and more consolidated in terms of business and how certain big conglomerates are swallowing up everything else. A lot of us at a certain point on this timeline are not going to have too many options other than to try and go into business for ourselves.
Right. And I would say that like having a boss is a more modern capitalist thing, in that like long ago, not long ago, people were their own bosses. You were essentially a tradesman. You did a thing, and essentially the success of your business mostly depended on the quality of the content that you were making and accessibility of other people who take in whatever your craft is. It's only once we started having a more capitalist society in which people were competing for the same thing that you essentially had to create different hierarchies in order to accommodate the demand to essentially beat out your opponents. And so that structure is the result of competition in that you have to create these infrastructures to create more content so that more people buy. And then essentially people need to be able to buy those things. And so you create this job market in order for them to continue to buy your content. It's why we have weekends, and that like Ford lobbied to have them because he knew that people would buy his cars in their off time if they weren't working. And so like it's the only reason why we have time off is so people can buy more things. So it's all a lot of the function of people trying to essentially make more money. And it's why we're in the predicament we're in now, and that like we got to a point where we had built this capitalist infrastructure, and then essentially to keep your money as a business, you have to start cutting corners, and those corners are usually people oriented. And so we've gotten to a place where it is too expensive to have like full-time employees with benefits. And so you start like having temps and freelancers, but you start underpaying them, which then leads people
productivity
to
goes down,
right?
Morality goes down. You know what I mean? Like, but then you go places like, and like I said, I'm not the smartest guy here, so I won't. My facts may need to be checked.
That's Lex.
But like, you go aren't there places like Sweden that have like 4-day work weeks and shit, and like 3-day work weeks and stuff like that? And it's like, everybody's chilling over there. You know what I mean?
Depending on the size of the company, too, the issue isn't really the company can't afford to pay people. It's that when there is an increase in revenue based on productivity, that ends up getting sucked up by shareholders and executives, and that doesn't trickle down. When they hold on to all that money, and they realize they can get away with holding on to all that money, they'll take as much as they possibly can. There's less to pay people for their work. There's less incentive to work harder. Again, long enough timeline, that's not sustainable. That is a factor in what is happening right now.
Yeah. And I think that like also we had gotten to such a rigid, like even I'm gonna keep my statement specifically to the entertainment industry, and that like we had gotten to a point of such a rigid system that people needed additional avenues to just have their voices heard. Which essentially led to a boom of entrepreneurship in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, look at YouTube and just the whole prosumer culture.
Right.
And just, you know what I mean? The fact that we can become filmmakers tomorrow if we wanted to. We have those resources now. So
because the fact that we can do this, exactly what we're doing right now, is part of that.
Right, because before, the only way to do it was to go through the gatekeeping of a studio, have them try to finance whatever it is you're doing, and it was the only way for people to consume it. And then we had the really big boom of people creating their content, and essentially as you create higher quality content or as you build your following, you start bubbling up to the top, and that created influencer culture, which essentially led to, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but the idea of creating content for the simple fact of creating it as opposed to creating it with a purpose.
Right.
Because as long as, and this is part of the YouTube concept in that like their algorithms made it so you had to keep creating content in order for you to be featured. And so the only way to maintain your livelihood was just to keep cramming content in. And then we started getting into a more...
People started getting channels, and they started curating their stuff a lot more. Instead of just... I'll be honest with you right now. Like, for me personally, right now, it's just about creating.
Yeah.
Because I have such like big ideas, and I ask these grand creative questions to myself all the time, that I know that the undertaking of answering those questions is going to be something that's going to be a very long and drawn out process. So my remedy to that is to just kind of blindly create while those answers kind of start to formulate.
Yeah.
Which is why it's like I'm like the mood that I'm in on 2019, as if I'm just like, do it. Like, just do it. Like, don't spend any more time thinking about it. Like, we did our first podcast like the first week back here, like after the second, and like there was all these reasons like why we like didn't have time to do it, but I was just like we can't like not do this, you know what I mean? Like it's just about doing, and it's just about, and like you'll figure that other stuff out. Like you'll find your purpose and you'll find the reasons why you're doing things, but like if you sit and you wait for the right moment to do it, then you will fall back into having to pay your bills, having to, you know what I mean? I got to take some hours off for this because I got to make sure that I get this bill paid, this, that, and the third. And it's like, no, like we got to do it because nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah, these are the conversations I've been having with myself recently along those lines, like sitting there going, okay, there are 100,000 reasons why XYZ may not work out exactly the way you want it to, or why maybe this idea isn't big enough, or whatever obstacle you can create in your own mind.
Exactly.
But that time is going to pass anyway.
Exactly.
That time is going to pass whether you sit there or whether you go and give it a shot. Even if you're like, well, because in this business, there's nothing is certain. No one really knows anything.
And half the stuff that we laud is just people getting lucky anyway.
Right,
They're
exactly.
like, we just went out and did it.
Right. Past success is no guarantee of future success. There are so many different reasons to talk, or ways you could talk yourself out of it. But if you have it in you, that time passes no matter what. So if that time's going to pass no matter what, why don't you give it a shot anyway?
I couldn't have said it better myself. Get, you know what I mean?
It did, though. It took me, to be fair, though, and to be totally honest, it took me a while to get to that point because there was a big stretch of time where circumstance just hit me negatively in a bunch of different ways right around the same time, and I fell into this rut of allowing myself to talk myself out of it for a long time. And eventually, relatively recently, honestly, like I came back around to, why am I wasting this time? This is incredibly foolish because in 10 years, I would love it if I could look back and go, well, maybe it didn't all go exactly the way I wanted it to.
Exactly.
But I used that time the best way I could, and I didn't sit. I actually went and gave it a shot.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that we have a lot of shitty ideas. We have a lot of terrible things that need to get out of the way so that we can start making the nice things, the good things. And it's like the only way to do that is just to continue to make stuff. And I used to be very like meticulous about putting stuff out because I was worried that one, like it just wouldn't be the right way, and two, like people wouldn't watch it. And it's like I've gotten so over the fact if anybody watches my stuff, like it's not even funny. Like I feel like I'll be the kind of person that like wouldn't go to my premiere because it's just like I'd be ready to do the next movie and stuff like that. Like I could care less who sees it. I want people to see it and I want people to be moved by it. But my ambition and the need for me to do this cannot rely on whether or not people will see it, because that's such a defeating mentality. You know what I'm saying? It's like I feel like whether or not people see it is a luxury. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's how it needs to be. That's how I look at it. That's how I choose to look at things as an aspiring auteur. And it's like, you know what I mean? And like I said, like all the time you spend perfecting is time still lost. And it's like what we don't know and what we need to be continually reminded of is that perfection comes from repetition. And it's like we need to just keep going out there doing things. I'll be doing my second podcast. I was supposed to do it today, but work got in the way and now we can't, you know what I'm saying? We can't do it. So it's like, you know, it's about fighting that kind of stuff, because that's the only way you're going to usher in that lifestyle that you want to live. And there are so many people, and I got some numbers here too that I'm going to bring up here in a second, but there are so many people that have taken this mentality and was like, yo, I don't want to get my happiness from what society has told me the American dream is, you know what I mean? The 9 to 5. You know what I mean? Like I need to go out there and I need to seek fulfillment in other ways. And there are other ways to seek that fulfillment, but it starts with making the active decision to actually go out there and do it. Like, don't sit here and talk about it like we're doing right now, but it's like, by talking about this on a podcast that you guys have formulated, we're actively doing that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So there's just so many ways to do it, but you have to do it.
Right.
You gotta do it.
If you are listening, odds are you've looked at different YouTubers, different channels, and you've gone like,
I should do a podcast.
Well, but you've gone, this is awful, and yet this person is so hyper successful, making a bunch of money off of this. I could do this. Why don't I have this? The reason you don't have it is because that person did it and you didn't.
Exactly.
Go do it.
Somebody said something. I don't know who. I maybe read this somewhere, but I'm like, if you have an idea, an original idea, you literally have like 48 hours to start working on that idea before someone else in the world thinks about it and starts working on it. Something like that. Somebody did the math or something like, and it's probably like way off, but if you think about it, like that's, you know what I mean? That's how you have to treat it. Like, you know what I mean? Because like, if you thought about something, chances are somebody else thought about it. Right. You know what I mean? Like if you're in the movie, like I wouldn't, you know what I mean? I wouldn't have did it that way. Somebody in that theater is probably like, yeah, I wouldn't have did it that way either. I also feel like as an auteur and as a creator, and I could be wrong and I want to be wrong, people who are listening prove me wrong, but I think we live in a time where the best has already happened. The best shit, the best movies, the best books, the best paintings are here already. So what we need to do is look at all of that stuff and figure out ways to strike new ground and strike new, you know what I mean, and evoke new emotions through the stuff that's already existed. Because if you start looking at all this stuff, if you deep dive into old TV shows and old movies, and like they will put you on game on like how to tell stories on levels and ways that you never thought you could. And it's like, we're not paying attention to that enough. And I just feel like if I'm not saying turn our heads backwards and just focus on all the stuff that came before, but recognize that like genius was struck several times over and the remnants of that is everywhere. You just gotta look for it and then apply it to the voice that only you have and the eyesight that only you have, and that's where new legend comes from.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. I think that I'd phrase it less as like the best has already happened in that like I think that what the stage we're in now is that I feel like we're in a very big transitional period in that like the things that have been covered ad nauseum. And I think that like we're at a place where we've stopped kind of innovating. Mostly
we start reminiscing.
Right. And a lot of it is because it's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of thing. And that like, I feel like a lot of what we're doing now is cleaning up messes from the past in addition to just trying to survive on a regular basis, which doesn't necessarily facilitate innovation. And so a lot of progress is not happening because we're trying to we're in damage control mode. Like for example, just to illustrate what I'm talking about, in that like when the iPhone came out, it was a very big thing. It changed the way that we dealt with the way that we interacted with the world, and also just the way that we had access to the world in and of itself. But since then, back in, I think it was like 2005, 2006, we haven't had a new thing that would take its place. And innovation takes time. But we have all these companies that are focused on trying to push us forward to the next level. But like, it's all iterations of the same thing, in that we're all mining the same area.
Right. Like there's no like next smartphone conceptually. There is the next smartphone. There is, here's the new fancy, here's the iPhone that will touch you in your erogenous zones in a very nice way in public, but in a subtle way so nobody can see it happening, and it's $2,000. People will buy it. We get that. We get the next gadget-filled version of it.
What we already have.
Right.
But we don't have anything that has caused a seismic shift in the way we...
Yeah, like because people aren't sitting around anymore thinking about how to be in the sky. You know what I
Well,
mean?
yes, we don't. Well, I think
We don't have to. We don't have, you know, that need for like, what if has gotten so much smaller because we've answered that question. So you know what I mean?
It feels like societally, culturally, our vision has become a lot more myopic, and I do feel like one of the potential negatives of things like smartphones is if you're not careful, it makes it super easy for your view to become ultra myopic.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about looking at the sky, right? Like I think about that a lot. Like when did we decide we don't care about space travel anymore? Like I was the movie First Man that Damien Chazelle did with Ryan Gosling. That movie, there are elements of that. I mean, it's a pretty solid flick, but like conceptually, thematically, it filled my heart because it's all a big celebration of sense of adventurous curiosity and pushing boundaries and going where no man has gone before.
Yeah.
You know, like we lost that at some point.
Yeah.
Because it was a luxury. It was a luxury to be able to sit and go, yo, how can we devote millions of dollars to putting a guy on that thing we see at night? Right now, a lot of our like money and resources and thought power are either going to our day-to-day lives, going to work, or they're going towards like, again, just like solving the big issues that we've developed over the last few centuries, decades, things like global warming, things like
I wish more money was going to global warming.
But like all of these things that we've essentially,
I mean, but then you have your Elon Musks of the world who's like trying to like get people on Mars and stuff like that. So like, I still feel like, I mean, I you know, say what you want about Elon Musk, but like to me, he reflects someone who continues to think outwardly,
right,
and to carry that spirit of what if that we spoke about has lost so many of us. I don't know about his true motives or whatever, but on the surface, it looks like he's just trying to get out into the cosmos and stuff like that. So it's like, you know, for everyone that's kind of fallen into like, well, I'm good with what we have, there's still somebody that's like, but what about more? What else is there?
Well, part of, you bring up Elon Musk, and this is a good example, right? Like Tauri, you were just saying how a lot of people now, by necessity, have to focus way more on just surviving day to day,
right,
than we did maybe even a couple of decades ago.
Yeah.
So some of that has to do with the fact that some money is going to things that we would hope it would go towards, but a lot of this money is just getting sucked up by a handful of people and hoarded and kept there. These people don't care about that stuff. If big CEOs would actually pay their employees a living wage so people didn't have to fear that they wouldn't be able to make it through the next month, then we would have time, a little bit more time anyway, to sit and think about what if and what could we do with this sense of adventure we now have a little bit more space for because we know we're going to eat today. That is a solvable problem, but I don't know how to convince certain folks to want to solve that problem.
I feel like we're in a very tough spot in time. I think that if we survive the next decade, yes, we're gonna have. There are a lot of big moves that are gonna have to be made. But I think that like kind of going back to the big topic of the day, I think that like this is a moment to. We've talked about like the dark side of people who are starting these ventures for the sole purpose of money.
Right.
But it's like also if you are an entrepreneur and you're making this business, there's also this aspect or responsibility to also kind of give back to the community. And I feel like that's part of what the People's Collective is doing. And that like it's taking these people who have these skills and is allowing them to collaborate and also bring in other people who might have some skills that need to be built and learn from one another.
The best thing about the People's Collective is for the first time since moving to LA, I mean, I got a version of it at Super Deluxe. I got a version of the lifestyle that I was trying to lead at Super Deluxe, but it was always to whatever the powers that be allowed.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the People's Collective is the first time I can say that I'm in a position where I can literally show up and be 100% myself and be me. And when that When you're in a space like that, you really start to see what you're capable of, how you help out and on a part of a larger machine, what you bring to the table. You know what I mean? You really can start to define your value in that. And I just feel like we need more environments in whatever industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where people can do that. You know what I mean? And it's like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm all for, because like, all right, so can I bust out some numbers, guys?
Yeah, of course you can.
I screenshot some facts here so I can sound smart.
Good. Because make this a factual podcast. We're putting out a lot of conjecture.
A lot of bullshit.
So the first,
just nothing but wall-to-wall bullshit.
So the first thing I screenshot was that it says 27 million Americans will leave full-time jobs from now through 2020. That'll bring the total number of self-employed people to 42 million. Right? So that compares to just back in 2017, where 126 million Americans were working full-time jobs. So that means that, like, basically they're saying that everything from how lawmakers approach policy and how employees hire and retain talent will be impacted because of this. You know what I mean? And it's like, lastly, it says non-traditional workers who, they're saying the non-traditional workers who will approach 33% of the workforce in the coming years want more control over how and why they work. And most won't return to an organization. And it said that adding that the self-employment movement will explode over the next 2 years. So it's like, I feel like I'm a part of that, man. Like I left Turner, I left Super Deluxe, and like, you know, you go home and you start talking to your friends and family and all these older people that come from previous generations that are like, you know, that heard about you lost your job, and then the next thing they're asking is like, when are you gonna get another one? You know what I mean? Like, and you know, I can even hear it when my mother talks to me. Like, you know, I talk to my mom, and I'm like I said, she gets the frontline commentary. So, you know, she's been very supportive of like everything, but I can even hear it in her voice when she's asking certain things. In the back of her mind, she's just like, I just hope he like can support himself. And like the way that she's been brought up to think is, I hope he gets another job.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, I can't blame her for that. And it's like, I really appreciate the fact that she's like keeping kind of all those thoughts to the back, because I'm, on the other hand, I'm saying like, maybe this is the time where I don't get another job and I just start figuring out, because my rent is $1,300 a month. And I live by whether or not I can pay my rent. You know what I mean? So my life has become every 30 days. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, right now I'm in a situation with unemployment and the severance package that I got from Super Deluxe that has positioned me to a point where I can pay like at least 2 months ahead right now. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm saving up for the third month right now as we speak, and I don't have to pay that until like March. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, if I can continue to do that and start to maneuver and find ways to like get that $1,300 every 30 days, then like that's the new job. You know what I mean? That becomes, it's like, I don't want to have to go and get my hair done so that I can go to a job interview and convince somebody who's like barely listening anyway.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's a wrap for that, man. And I feel like a lot of Americans, especially in our generation, are just like waking up to that. It's like, you want to wake up, like, who says Friday is the weekend? Like, who says that shit?
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not like we're saying like, guys, quit your job right now.
No, I'm definitely not saying that.
No, but like,
you need that.
Well,
yes.
I'm listening to the numbers that you were given, right? And it's like, okay, so by X year, X number of Americans will leave full-time jobs, but that's not all going to be by choice. You know what I mean? Like, some people are going to lose their jobs as things consolidate more and more and more. People are going to get laid off. So people aren't necessarily going to have a choice, but to try and find something on their own. Like, talking to people from previous generations gets a little bit exhausting sometimes about where this topic is concerned, because they sincerely, it's through no fault of their own, come from a world where if you wanted a job, you could just go get one. And if you don't have a job, it's because you're not seeking one aggressively enough. But that's no longer necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's the landscape has changed in that, like, there is no job security no matter where you work. Like, it's it's rare to stay at a job more than about 3 or 4 years, I think is the current average.
Yeah.
Whereas like people would stay in a job for at least a decade. They might be promoted and stay at their company for 30 years. Whereas
Just become lifers.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's not a thing anymore, in that like the cost of living is constantly increasing. And a lot of the times the only way to increase your income is to go to another company and essentially increase your salary that way. Otherwise, the 3% increase in these day-to-day 9-to-5 jobs isn't enough to kind of compete with the amount of cost of living increases.
And then, of course, right on a long enough timeline, if you're not paying your workers a living wage, they won't be able to work for you anymore,
Right.
even if they want to, and your business falls apart.
Exactly.
Right. But like, and that's another thing I really enjoy about like freelance, like the freelance lifestyle. And it's something that you've been kind of talking about a bit, in that it's less about just working, and it's more about honing a craft and being able to utilize that wherever it is needed. In the same way that like entrepreneurship at its core is about fulfilling a need. It's about seeing where there are gaps in either society or a specific market and finding a solution and making that solution available to as many people as possible. And I love that is that's where we're going, and that I think that it'll allow us to enter that state where we're able to innovate again.
Yeah.
We're able to have the freedom to think about what needs need to be filled,
So
and
you're saying-
then gather people
So you're
under
saying
that
the Matrix
umbrella.
will reset.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
But like the world is absolutely changing. This is a real fascinating time to exist on planet Earth.
The best time and the worst time.
But like Tauri, a little bit earlier, you were saying like if we survive the next decade, a lot of things will have to change and shuffle around, and some big moves will have to be made, and some big innovations will be required. And that is across the board. That's just about any industry you can think of. A great many policies that
I'm going to go
dictate
and
how
say
we
any
live.
facet of society, because if you look at like, you know what I mean? If you look at the whole Me Too movement, that in itself is a response to just the archaic mentality that like we've placed women under for the longest time. You know what I mean? Because it's like we come from, I was raised where it's like, this is the man, this is the woman, this is what the man does, this is what the woman does. Like I'm still like a part of that generation, and it's like I'm learning every day that's like, this is bullshit. Like it's something that we were just taught to think is normal and is, you know what I mean? And it's like it's been ingrained into every like facet of like what we think is real. And it's like I'm learning so rapidly that that's all being undone, and the old way of like ways of thinking are starting to fall apart at the seams. And so it's like you said, 10 years from now there might be whole completely different policies that, you know what I mean? And it's just like I'm all here for it. Like I'm here for it, but I feel like moving forward, like, don't be afraid to say you don't know anything. Don't be afraid to say you don't understand.
Right, because the truth is no one does.
You know what I'm saying? Like that, don't be afraid to say you don't understand, because I think that is like human pride. It's for us to just act like we know everything. You know what I mean? I know I talk like I know everything, but I have to constantly express that I'm still learning all of these new ways to think, and like all of these new, and it's like I want to know as much as possible, but like, you know what I mean? Like just it's insane, man. It's insane. Everything is being undone.
And as we see all these paradigms shifting, right? Like everything being undone doesn't necessarily have to be a negative. It's not
have
like
to be chaos.
Right. It's not like the house is going to burn down. Everything's
That's what
on
a lot
fire.
of people think.
That's
what a lot of people think.
It does look like that right now, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And that's where the innovation, the hopeful potential innovation comes in, and it has to be across the board as everything changes. That includes, of course, the entertainment industry. As if you're paying attention to the entertainment industry of late, you see that every year now there are these massive seismic upheavals as far as how can we make the most money off of our product? How can we get product made? How many places are there to take your stuff and sell it?
Yeah.
All of that stuff is changing now, and especially, here's this word again, consolidation, as every company becomes one company, or just
That's insane.
3 or 4, everything's going to change, right? Like YouTube, it's harder and harder to make money on, right? Like Instagram, you can build an audience, but very few people actually get to monetize that way. Podcasts, surprise kids, there's not a ton of money in this.
You guys aren't rich?
Yeah, so
Not from this.
you can't tell based on how I'm dressed that I'm super wealthy. But so by necessity, new things are going to have, new platforms are going to have to be developed, new outlets, new ways of telling stories, because the goal used to be for a lot of people, either I want to get my sitcom, or I want to get my starring role on a series, or I want to be in the biggest movies possible. Those things are going to increasingly go away, or they're going to be fewer and fewer in number as far as different places you can go to do those things. You're not going to have too much of an option, but to try and figure out how to do some of this stuff yourself. And like one of the great things about something like People's Collective is you've got a hand in so many pots with so many different kinds of personalities. Exactly. It positions you, and you've got this really excellent attitude about doing the work for the sake of creating.
The work. Yeah.
And so I feel like you are positioned exceptionally well to see that new thing coming, or at the very least to go, well, maybe this is nothing, but I'm going to try it. And that's how you potentially, maybe if you're lucky, because again, luck is a massive factor in any of this, you are somebody that finds, or at least contributes to the discovery of that new thing, that new innovation. Because the thing is, right, it's hard to fathom right now, there will be a next YouTube. If we don't obliterate ourselves as a species, there will be the next
there'll be a
Instagram,
next Twitter.
Or there'll be the next.
But that's the thing, bro. Like, do you see how we're saying that? We're only saying it based off of things we know. And it's like, that next whatever isn't going to have that. You know what I mean? It's just going to be like, somebody's going to be like, you know what? I think it'll be really cool if X, and then next thing you know, we'll be able to pull that shit out of in our pockets, and it'll be there. Right. You know what I mean? But it's like, I don't want to say like YouTube or Twitter, because it's like, those are the precursors to like how we...
Yeah, I don't mean next YouTube as far as like the next edition of the smartphone. I mean literally like the next thing that is going to change the way we access, consume, produce content the way YouTube did.
And it's like, because I call it like, I use the metaphor like going to a restaurant and ordering one of everything. Right? It's going to take a minute for that to come out. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you have to like, that's what it's like. It's like, that you have to sit there with the patience, knowing that like they're back there making everything on the list for you. So it's like, you're not going to get that right away. And that's how you have to think about that next big thing. You just kind of gotta sit there and just work until till luck strikes you, or you live and you die, and then the research that you were doing inspires somebody else, and it, you know what I mean? Like, that's just how it works. You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
they say most innovations are a dumb idea plus time.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is, I think, my favorite way of coming at, because yes, you're in kind of piggybacking off of what you're saying. Like, if you can only think of things in the frames of what already exists, you're never going to be able to innovate, because you're always going to be pulling from these references.
And I am shamelessly pulling from references right now. I still need to define myself as an author. I mean,
but you're essentially using what you know to define what your style is, and then from there, like, because it's there. I forget the, like, there's 5, and I think we talked about this like early last year, but there are like 5 steps in terms of like self-branding or defining yourself, and one is like inspiration. It's like inspiration, imitation, something your own style. I forget what the 5 are. I'll tweet them or whatever, but like, that's what it is. Like, you're inspired, then you do things in the style of whatever it is that inspired you, and then you have to essentially realize that what you're making isn't the same. You highlight what it is that makes it uniquely you, and then essentially that defines your brand. So even if you are pulling references, it's kind of like the way that Quentin Tarantino does his filmmaking, in that like, he takes all these disparate elements and then combines it to create something new.
And now you have the Tarantino style.
Right.
Right, which is actually a perfect example of what you're talking about how Tarantino sort of did that in a way that made something that felt unique, that felt like he developed a specific voice, specific style, but then you have since like around 94, because he did Reservoir Dogs 92 was released, Pulp Fiction 94, and that's kind of where he exploded. People have been trying to just do what he does,
right,
without really understanding functionally what makes
what
he does right, like his approach to it, and what
Exactly.
makes it work. So perfect example of what you're talking about. Nobody's gonna innovate by trying to do exactly what he did, because
Right.
it's been done now. Why would I go watch your derivative thing when I can go watch I mean, you could argue Tarantino stuff is all derivative by design, but his thing where he took all these elements, put it in a blender, and now you do have something that is uniquely iconographic in itself.
right.
Perfect example, like Michael Jackson, for example, King of Pop, right? Everybody knows thinks of Michael Jackson. When I say the moonwalk, you think Michael Jackson, right?
Right.
But it's like that came from James Brown, that came from Jackie Wilson, and there's a you remember Smooth Criminal? Mm-hmm. That iconic video, Michael in the white suit, and the fucking speakeasy, everything. There's a Fred Astaire film that's like an exact rip from, and if you look back and you research, it's if you YouTube Dem Bones Cafe, DEM Bones Cafe, that is the direct inspiration for Smooth Criminal. And it's like if you look at the set pieces, the way the people are moving, you can like see everything that Michael Jackson was inspired from in the Smooth Criminal video. But here's the thing, like Michael Jackson being Michael Jackson, watching Fred Astaire, and then knowing he's the person, like, because there were a lot of people that were watching Michael that weren't necessarily watching Fred Astaire, right? So Michael being the one watching Fred Astaire, being inspired and creating his iconography in what would become Smooth Criminal is essentially taking Fred Astaire's essence and just amplifying it to the multitudes of people who are looking at Michael. But Smooth Criminal becomes an icon in and of itself because of that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's all, like I said, it's all derivative, man. Like it's all like, you know, and it's just, I don't think it's a bad thing, because it honestly breaks down to the whole spirit of like what the People's Collective is at the end of the day. Because it's like, you can't do this alone.
Yeah.
You can't do this alone. As much as, and I'll be the first to tell you, I'd love to sometimes. I would love to. If I could, like, can you imagine if you could make your own movie by yourself and you're standing up there and you're just like, yeah, thank me.
Right.
You know what I mean? like you know what I mean? I have an ego, you know what I mean? As a creator, I have one of those things, and I have to keep it in check. But like, at the end of the day, why would you want to do it alone? You know what I'm saying? And it's just like Akira Kurosawa said it best. Like, he's like, I don't understand the essence of filmmaking, and I probably never will. But like, that's the process of that's how you try to understand it. You just do it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, yes, it's derivative, and yes, but I don't know. There's still so much work to be done, man. And it's just like, I don't know. Just got to do it.
I also want to state that, like, I don't feel like, I feel like we're using derivative, but I feel like it's more that everything builds off of the next
yes,
thing.
yes.
So, like,
it's not. Yeah, we're not. Yeah, because there are ways to do it.
Right.
There are ways to do it, and it's, you know, and I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to get the audience to think that what I'm saying to them is to like steal all your shit. Like, that's not what it is. But
Right.
I'm saying be inspired by what's before you. Like, really take a time to look back. I'm doing Werner Herzog's masterclass right now.
Oh, how is that?
It's really good.
Yeah.
And it's like so hypnotic, because it's like he's talking to you the whole time. So it's like, feels like you're talking. It's, you know, and you know how he sounds, man.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you just fall asleep to his
At some
voice.
point, we got to do Agira the Wrath of God on this show, because that movie's wild.
Oh, okay. But yeah, man. But he teaches a lot of like looking back and seeing, you know what I mean? And just like, there's just so much, like, film school is everywhere, man, if you look for it, you know? So I know I'm getting off topic here, but you know.
No. I feel like it's good commentary.
Yeah.
However, we are out of time, guys.
Oh boy.
I know. I could literally talk about this for a whole nother hour.
This was good though. I'm really happy to be back, man. And I got to get you guys to come on our podcast now. You got to come on to the People's Collective, and
That'd be
we got to
great.
cross promote and do all that good stuff, man. So I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Is the podcast up yet?
The podcast is up. We will be up every other Wednesday. Right now we're on Podbean. You can search The People's Collective on Podbean. We're waiting to get approved for iTunes right now. When that happens, we'll let you know. And but we're trying, like I said, the podcast, the first episode was like a labor of love, and it was just one of those things where it's like, we're gonna do this shit even if we don't have all of our ducks in order. So it's very haphazard, but it came out. It sounds good. It's a 2018 wrap up on everything. We get into a lot of debates about stuff. It's really good, and it's gonna be a bi-weekly podcast that just it continues to just further brand us as a entity, and also just gives viewers and whoever cares to listen an opportunity to really see the people who are in the People's Collective and see how different we all are, and how we use those differences to our advantage, and how we embrace those differences and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be one of those things where like every episode will be something different. I get really heated when I talk, so that's going to be fun. So yeah. Awesome. Yeah, please tune in.
Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to just chat with you about stuff?
If they want to chat with me, you can find me on Instagram. I check that all the time. It's at Spike Leak, which is just Spike Lee with a K at the end. It's a play on words there. And you can also follow The People's Collective, which will be the.peoples, Peoples .collective. And just follow us, man. And only thing I ask, and I'm going to say this all the time, it's like everybody's trying to do something. Everybody's trying to like get something off the ground. I'm going to ask you to follow us less and less. Just don't follow us when we're like popping and cool, because like that's corny. Like start now when we have like 227 followers. Like look at the process. Like don't hop on the bandwagon when we've done the work to make it a thing. Like we need you to make it a thing. So it's like just follow us now and see the rise, man. And I'm gonna try my best not to change on the way, but we'll see.
Yeah, and when they do get big, then you tell your friends to start following.
Right, that's how you do it. Just don't wait until, you know what I mean? Like, don't wait until we're popping and be like, oh, let me see what it is. Like, nah, man, like, that's corny. And I'm gonna say it's corny. If I notice that's what you're doing and I find out that's what you did, I'm gonna call you out. So.
Oh damn!
So yes, get on that bandwagon.
Now,
follow People's Collective early. Also, in the meantime, not only don't wait to follow People's Collective, don't wait to get out and do your own thing, right? Because we're gonna need innovations. We're gonna need you. We're gonna need your uniqueness and your voice, because that's your currency.
Make the next People's Collective,
right? And even though there's not necessarily such a thing as a truly unique or original idea anymore, your voice is your voice, and that's something that you've got that nobody else has got. Go out, start your thing.
Make it happen. Or
at least give it a shot, because that time's going to pass anyway. So go follow the People's Collective and start a business, folks.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. I would even go as far to say it doesn't even have to be a business. Right. It can just be a venture or a hobby that you've always been meaning to do.
Do what you love, man.
Yeah, just something that you're passionate about.
Right, and like what we're doing right now, right, is like we just like to talk and have goofy conversations about nerd shit. And so we're like, you know what? We have microphones. Let's do it. And now it's a show. You can do that. You don't need anybody's permission to do that.
Don't need a boss.
Right? Like that's the thing, is like don't limit yourself to positions where you need somebody else's permission to show up and do that work.
Right.
And when you become your own boss, make sure you like working for yourself, because that's also a thing.
Yeah, I would also say that like even if it starts as a hobby, like treat it like a business.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the biggest hurdle to like stepping into that next step, is you forget that like just because you're doing it for fun doesn't mean that it's not something that you can capitalize on.
And that usually helps in allowing others to see it that way as well.
Right.
And that's how we find the next big thing.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So cool. And Lex, where can they find you?
Yes, while you're getting all your social media apps up to follow People's Collective, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @TheLexMichael.
Awesome. And you can find me at Tauri J. That's TERIJAY on Instagram and Twitter. But you can find this podcast at Missing Outcast, MISSINGOUTCAST, on both Instagram and Twitter.
And don't wait till we're super poppin' to follow us either, because we'll call you out.
Hell yeah, bruh. Speaking of being called out, if you have a chance, leave us a comment or a rating on iTunes. That helps people find us and helps other people get up on this thing. So, and if you do, we will read your rating on the show. We've gotten a few more ratings of 5 stars, which we really appreciate those.
That's very
we love
sweet of
you.
you.
Yeah. You know who you are. You know that you love this show, and we love you too. And so thank you for listening.
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you for being here.
Yeah, I want my jacket when I come back.
Okay,
next time.
yeah, definitely. You're going to get that jacket.
Missing Outcast jacket.
Hell yeah. It might only be like waist high. Like it's going to be a kid's jacket.
Yeah, like we clearly got a kid's jacket on clearance. And then we put your name like in electrical tape on the back.
Right, yeah.
Take it.
But we will see you next week. Until
Later,
then,
guys.
you've been filled in. We filled you in. You're so filled. We filled up to the brim from your butt to your tongue, to your eyeballs, from your butt to your tongue.
To your tongue.
Yep.
What? I don't know if this is a sustainable sign off.
Are you sure?
If you are severely grossed out as I am by Tauri's sign out, please leave us a comment on iTunes, like, subscribe, 5 stars.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a better idea for a sign off, definitely hit us up on Twitter and we will try them out over the next few months. But until we have something better, you've been filled in.
Yeah, it's growing on me.
Ooh, it's uncomfortable.
MISSINGOUT. Nope. That's MISS.
You had it.
Wouldn't it be shitty if you got it wrong, though?
Yep. It's MISS. Nope. Fuck me.
And we lost all of our listeners.
It's Missing Outcast.
Did you know a turkey puppet once ran for the presidency of Ireland? Did you know that meat once rained from the skies of Kentucky? Did you know that there was an emperor of the United States for a while? Then listen to the Wiki Ship Down podcast.
We live in an age when the sum total of humanity's knowledge can be found in your pocket on a smartphone at any given time. But when that knowledge is peer editable, like it is on Wikipedia, what does that say about mankind? So follow us down the digital rabbit hole as we drink, joke, and curse our way through the random button on Wikipedia and see where our journey through humanity's knowledge takes us.
While you're at it, follow us on all social media at Wiki Ship Down. I'm Ruth Ann.
I'm Ryan, and be sure to find us every Wednesday on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or wherever you listen to podcasts.